Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about tonal values, what they are, why it's so important that you need to be able to analyze colour in terms of tonal value, and how you can apply all of this to your painting. Here on my YouTube channel I have a growing library of videos all to do with colour theory. But tonal value might be the first and most important thing that you need to consider. So I hope that you find this helpful. If you do, then please do have a look around my YouTube channel and subscribe here for more. Also consider checking me out over on my Patreon channel, where you'll gain access to all of my in-depth tutorials all about soft pastel. So firstly, what do I mean by tonal value? It's simply how light or dark a colour is. Is it a dark tone, a mid-tone, or a highlight? Where exactly does it come on the tonal scale? So when we think about the tonal value of a colour, it's as if we're imagining that colour in grayscale. We take the hue or the temperature out of the equation and only think about whether the colour is light or dark. So a quick example of this, if we take two colours that you would say really are opposites and they don't have a lot in common, well, you might be surprised to see that actually these two colours have one thing in common. They're really close to each other in terms of tonal value. Whereas these other two blues are actually quite different to the middle one, in terms of tonal value at least. The very first thing that I look at when I'm analysing a colour and trying to decide which colour I need to pick up is how light or dark it is. This comes before its hue or its temperature. And if you're wondering what I mean when I talk about a colour's temperature, then please do go and watch some of my other videos on this topic after this one. Because between tonal values and colour temperature, that will get you much closer to choosing accurate colours when you're painting. If you're aiming to paint something realistically, you can play with colour, you can push the hue and the saturation of your colours, but the main thing that you want to get accurate is your tonal values. My number one tip for analysing a colour's tonal value is using grayscale. Have your photo reference or a photo of what you're painting from life in grayscale form. Throughout your painting process or when you're finished, you can take a photo of your work and change that into grayscale too. Now when you compare these, it should be much more obvious where you need to go lighter or darker. In my experience of critiquing many of my students' work, people tend to not go dark enough. If you find that your work is looking a little bit flat, then it's likely that you're missing some contrast in your work, and that the range of tonal values within your work just isn't wide enough. So be braver with your dark tones. Try to explore a wider variety of mid-tones. And go easy on the highlights. 90% of the time, that's the advice that I'm giving people. I want to show you some examples of where tonal values really matter, but first, let's have a quick look at my pastel palettes. As you can see here, I keep my pastels in these little trays and I arrange them in colour groups. So for example, I've got my light lilacs here, my darker violets here. And I'm going to use my selection of greens really to talk about this. So as well as putting them in colour groups, so keeping, for example, all the greens together, I also arrange them roughly from light to dark in each of the trays. So this tray, for example, I've got my lighter green shades, my cooler greens, so there's more blue in these ones, and it runs from light at the top down to the darkest here. The same with my yellowy greens, the warmer greens in the lighter selection, running from lightest down to darkest. And even with my mid to dark greens, the same idea, running from the lighter mid-tones down to the very darkest ones at the bottom. And this makes it much quicker to find the colour and then the correct value within that colour group. After that, as I mentioned, I'll need to determine whether it's a warmer version of the colour or a cooler version of the colour that I need. But the very first thing that I do each time is choose the correct value. And to be honest, my pastels are looking a little bit grubby and unorganised at the moment because I've just been so busy with painting recently and I haven't really kept up with keeping them all nicely in order, so they need a little bit of a tidy, but at the worst they're still usually roughly organised from light through to dark in each of my trays, and that's one of the few things that keeps me organised at all times. Like I mentioned earlier, many very different colours might have a similar tonal value in common. So you could choose quite a different colour within your painting, and as long as you choose one with the correct colour value, then you could still have your painting turn out realistic. Let's have a look at some examples. In this painting of a golden retriever, I tried to push my colour choices in terms of hue and temperature to create a warm, glowing effect. You can literally throw bright red and violet into the coat of a dog if it's the correct value. Looking at it in grayscale, you can see how it works. By getting the value and the contrast correct, you're then free to play with colour for different effects. Value is also really important when you're creating dark coloured subjects. Getting those darks dark enough will affect how rich and contrasted it is. Also, being careful to use sometimes mid-tones as your highlights can also be important. But try to compare everything in a painting of both the darkest area and the brightest. Value is also super important when creating light coloured subjects. It's always tempting to just pick up pure white to make your white subject look brighter. But it's actually the contrast in those darker areas that's going to help your light subjects look brighter. So for example, with this one, I've really only used the pure white in some of these areas that are actually being hit by the sunlight. In the rest of the dog, which is mostly in shadow, I've used colours as dark as this and some of my lovely additional violet colours to achieve the light coloured fur. So when you're thinking about the tonal values, really compare those brightest parts in your photo reference to the other areas of the fur and determine whether you need to save your brightest colours just for those parts and use other tonal values for the rest. So whether you're working in a monochrome medium or in full colour in either soft pastel or some other paint, the wider the range of tonal values that you can include in your work, the more realism you will achieve. I hope that this video has given you lots of tips on how to better analyse your colours in terms of especially tonal value. But please do go and check out all of my other videos, especially in this playlist, as they really do lead on from this video. And if you did enjoy this, then I would ask that you please subscribe here and show my channel some support. You can also join me on Patreon for access to all of my full-length tutorials and to be a part of a wonderfully supportive group of artists who are all at different stages of their pastel journey. And if you're interested in learning more about that, then you can head over to my brand new tutorials library on my website, emmacolbertart.com. There you can actually browse all of the tutorials that I have available before you even sign up. But thanks to everyone for watching, and as always, until next time, happy pasteling.